Then Jesus said to the disciples, "There was a rich man who had a manager, and charges were brought to him that this man was squandering his property. So he summoned him and he said to him, 'What is this I hear about you? Give me an accounting of your management, because you cannot be my manager any longer.' Then the manager said to himself, 'What will I do? Now that my master is taking that position away from me, I'm not strong enough to dig, I'm ashamed to beg. I have decided what to do, so that when I am dismissed as manager, people may welcome me into their homes.' So, summoning his master's debtors one by one, he asked the first, 'How much do you owe my master?' And he answered, 100 jugs of olive oil. And he said to him, 'Take your bill, sit down quickly, and make it 50. Then he said to another, 'And how much do you owe?' And he replied, 100 containers of wheat. And he said to him, 'Take your bill, and make it 80. And his master commended the dishonest manager because he had acted so shrewdly. For the children of this age are more shrewd in dealing with their own generation than are the children of the light. And I tell you, make friends for yourself by means of dishonest wealth, so that when it is gone, they may welcome you into the eternal homes. Whoever is faithful in a very little is faithful also in much, and whoever is dishonest in a very little is dishonest also in much. If then you have been faithful with dishonest wealth, who will entrust to you the true riches? And if you have not been faithful with what belongs to another, who shall give you what is your own? No slave can serve two masters, for a slave will either hate the one and love the other, or be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and wealth. And this is the gospel of the Lord. Dan is the first among the next two people for the Sundays who will be giving temple talks as we close in on our Consecration Sunday, October 13th. I'll remind you that there's one service at 10 o'clock followed by a luncheon so we can gather together. You know, the subject of money is always one that's very, very careful. It's kind of like, I remember talking to someone who worked in an insurance company. He said, one of the most guarded secrets was how much you paid. And you didn't want anybody else to know for two reasons. Either you made less than someone else, and that wouldn't make you very happy, or you made more, and you would be the subject of somebody else's unhappiness. I want to tell you a wonderful story that really kind of bears fruit into this very difficult gospel that Luke gives us this morning. And this whole idea of what he talks about, dishonesty and this shrewd money manager who is actually applauded by his boss, not so much for the fact that he was cheating him, but that he was a shrewd guy when he was nailed to the wall, so to speak. I'll tell you the story of my history, and as many of you know, several years that I spent in the Graymore Friars in New York. Wonderful place. It was right across the Hudson River from West Point. I used to walk over there an awful lot, over the Bear Mountain Bridge, and just kind of walk around West Point. And the Friars got involved in a soup kitchen down in Harlem. And it was run by a rather extraordinary lady whose name was Mother Lovey. You should like that name, Mother Lovey. And she was lovely. She liked to hug people. And we got involved in all of this, and we would go down on Wednesdays early in the morning to prep. prepped the food, and Mother Lovey was instinctively a person who knew where to go to get stuff. She would go down in Manhattan into the more expensive restaurants, and in the evening around 1 and 2 o'clock, she had people scouring around. And what they would throw away, she put into her truck, and back it went to her soup kitchen. And it was an extraordinary thing, because any time you might sit down at Mother Lovey's noontime soup kitchen and find yourself eating roast beef, because she was able to get it rather than throw it out. Now, she got very friendly with an Italian restaurant, and the owner of the restaurant, she perceived to be a person who had, shall we say, other income. And she gradually got into friendly conversations with him. And it happened one day that she stopped in his office, and while she was there, the person who delivered his other income happened to come in the office right at the wrong time, because there was Mother Lovey. She recognized that satchel. Come in once a week. She had never seen it in this office before. And so she said, well, now, I kind of have this feeling that you and I both know what this is all about. And he protested that he had no idea what she was talking about. And she said, well, why don't we make a deal? And why don't you just give me that satchel this one time? And I'll kind of keep your little secret a secret with myself. And he did it. He did it. And she brought it back to her soup kitchen, counting a yield, and this is in 1965, of $22,000. Well, Mother Lovey was just drunk with power. And in her little kitchen, she replaced the 2 old gas stoves that you would have had in your house with all kinds of wonderful new equipment, stainless steel, and she busted out the walls, added a storeroom, and she loaded it with flour and all the ingredients that would have made 10,000 of her very famous buttermilk biscuits. Now she had the oven to do it in. And so somebody said to Mother Lovey, Mother Lovey, you know where that money came from, don't you? And she said, well, I have a feeling I know where it came from. And he said, you know, that was extortion. And she said, well, I prefer to think of it as a meeting of the minds. And that because she was brought up knowing her Bible in the Harlem Baptist Church, she said, I was just knowing what to do with dishonest money. And I could use it a lot better than he could, and I will. When Jesus speaks in this whole parable here, he gives this idea that sometimes people are caught between that rock and a hard place. It wasn't so much, you see, that the man who was the manager was brought down by his boss for stealing, but he did admire his shrewdness when he was under the gun. And then he goes on to say, you know, oftentimes the children of this age are more shrewd dealing with their own than are you who are called to be the children of the light. And so we're left in this great quandary about what the power of money does in our lives, and how we use it, and what the end results are going to be. Mother Lovey knew perfectly well that the gains of that $22,000 was on the pain of other people's addictions to drugs. And so she made a decision to say, but not this time. This time it will be used to feed the people who cannot feed themselves. And if she felt that, you see, that somehow this was tainted money, in her generosity, she made it clean. And in making clean, many people were able to eat who would not otherwise eat. You know, we talk about a certain form of spirituality, what we're supposed to be as Christians. We do all of these things, and yet the reality is it's wrapped up in the reality of who we are, how we make our money, and what we do with it. And it's interesting to note that in all of the Gospels, money is the most frequently talked about item on Jesus' mind. What it does to the rich. You remember the rich man who had so many things, he tore down his barns to build bigger ones so he could hoard it all. You remember the story of Dives and Lazarus, the man who was under the table eating the crumbs of the wealthy man. You remember all of these stories, and he keeps bringing this up because he knows that somehow there is a power to all of this, and it has that power, if we're not careful, to corrupt. And even in that corruption, it seems to be sometimes transparent to us what it's really doing to us. And there's the old saying of the man who was told that you can't take it with you, then he said, then I'm not going. Really? And that's the type of arrogance you see that says to the bitter end, I'm going to hold on tight. Now look, there are so many wonderful things that I see going on at St. Luke. I mean, already we have bought 50 of those mosquito nets. We're going to send it over to Africa, right? $10 saves a baby's life. Doesn't have to get bit by the damn mosquito, right? He can live. She can live. We have our little boy Paul that we're going to take under our arms, under our wings, and that takes money. We go out and we do all kinds of outreach, and that takes money. It also takes money to heat this place, doesn't it? It's big. But this is our gathering place, so we can think about these things, isn't it? This is where we come, and we enliven ourselves. And all of this money talk about Jesus and servants and what you do with it, and what you want to bring out in your life. And all of those different things that empower us to become what Jesus calls us to be, what he calls the children of the light. And so, goodness, the lights are on. Now the only thing that has to be lit over and over is the light that's within us that God wants to light. That type of brilliance that says, I finally have discovered what he's talking about. And I like what he's saying, this Jesus of Nazareth. I like the possibility that the money in my hand has power. It has the power to do good. Not just for my life, but somehow for other people too. And then, in God's goodness, he has allowed me to take some of it and throw it away rather extravagantly and say, hey, take it. It's been over 40 years since my last encounter with Mother Lovey. And she was 78 years old when somebody came in at 6 o'clock in the morning, and all the dough to the buttermilk biscuits were mixed and ready to go in the oven, but she had died and was on the floor. It was kind of the perfect ending to this woman's life. Her hands still covered with flour, making the food for the poor who came into her place to eat. There could have not been a better place for her, for God to take her away. And I think sometimes I wonder about my own death and where I'm going to be and what will take me away. And I'm hoping you see that, at least as a symbol, my hands would be open in a gesture of generosity to the children that God has given me in my life, with whom my money, my time, my spirit could have been given. And I pray to God, you see, that would be so for you too. That somehow you will die with open hands and have given away the very possibility of all the power, your own money, your own time, your own being, and this so that your life is somehow have come into the lives of other people. And that spirit and that gospel will live and live and live over and over again. So, God bless you, Mother Lovey, because I know we are. Because you got it with outstretching